Hi everyone, it's Hans here, the founder of Cappuccino, and welcome to this mini-series of flat whites and insights in partnership with Brewed and Brewed Online. I was lucky enough to be invited to their space in Hackney, North London, to record 3 open, honest and vulnerable conversations with founders and talk about not only their business, but their own journey and their story and what coffee and the coffee industry means to them. So grab a coffee for yourselves, take a moment, and I hope you enjoy these latest conversations. Thank you, take care, and enjoy.
Hi.
Hi, nice to see you, Hans.
Yeah, good to see you. And thanks so much for taking some time to join me on Flat Whites and Insights. It's a little bit different, this one. I'm joining from Brewed Online, which is a cafe in London. I usually do this from my home, so there's a bit of a reason for that. But firstly, before we kick off, you're right to give a bit of an introduction to yourself, really, for myself and for those who might not know who you are.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Ryan Moore. I'm the founder or co-founder of Blendsmiths Drink Makers. We're based up in the Lake District, although we started out in Manchester, but we sort of migrated to the countryside for one reason or another. But yeah, if you don't know much about Blendsmiths, Blendsmiths are a company that produce super flavoursome drinks made from nothing but natural ingredients. And we predominantly work with the independent cafe scene, and we have done for the last 8 years now. And it's yeah, the journey started in a garage in 2017, and here we are today.
You might not be able to see it, no, that side. Somewhere there, it's hard on the camera. Behind me,
Yeah,
there
I
is a
can see.
Blendsmiths shelves. Amazing. But yeah, so 8 years ago. So what kind of led to get that going? Is this your first kind of venture into like business, or is it something like a bit of background in?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I feel like I answer it differently as the years go on, but all warranted, all valid reasons why. And I think if I really think about it long and hard, there's a number of reasons why. And I guess I wanted to be part of something different and unique, and part of something that meant something to people and had some longevity behind it. And really, I had all these great ideas running around my head to create something, um, conjure up something from nothing essentially. And obviously that's not always the easiest thing to do. So, a lot of the time entrepreneurs go out there and find something that they relate to and really enjoy and try and, I guess, do it better. I think primarily it came out of my background in coffee. So to take a few steps back, I was an only child growing up. I'm very close to my parents, and they used to love getting out into nature and going walking. And my balcony chip was always, can we go for a cup of coffee and a tea cake? So, you know, much to their delight, they would always say, right, we'll go for a walk and we'll go to a cafe. And there was something about just that experience in the cafes that I just really loved. It was, the smells and the conversations and all the sounds simultaneously that were happening. And I just really felt comfortable and at home in those sort of environments. And it wasn't until much later on that, I'd sort of gone through my career path and down a completely different journey that I ended up finding coffee again and this cafe industry that I completely fell in love with. But I didn't really sort of find my way in coffee in terms of I I essentially got something called overactive bladder syndrome, which was basically too much caffeine, high acidity, and quality coffee had a really bad side effect on me. So I sort of had to look at alternatives to drink, and I guess I was slightly underwhelmed with what was out there, and that was probably the impetus behind how Blendsmiths began and create that unusual that I was talking about before. But really, if I really dig deep into it and why I wanted to go on this journey myself, I guess is that I never really felt completely valued in the organizations that I was working in before. I'd worked for some really large blue chip organizations. I'm talking pre-coffee here. Some wonderful companies. I worked on major brands like Durex, Strepsil, and Nurofen, and Dr. Scholl. Always felt like a small cog in a very, very large wheel, and that just didn't fill my particular value bucket. And I know that's absolutely fine for the people, but for me, that just wasn't happening. So I always knew I just wanted to get out of that environment and be creative. I've always been a creative person. And you asked me before, is this my sort of first venture into business? I've started a landscape gardening business. I've started cutting hair. And this was all when I was young, sort of in and around going to university. So I was trying to figure out ways to create a business and make money on the side. My parents weren't particularly well off, so I always had to sort of work hard for money. And I just always saw it as a bit of a challenge, if I'm being honest. And then the other part of that, really, that I don't really talk about all that often because I'm a really happy person, and for 60% of my life, I'm very happy. But yeah, I went through a period of sort of dark days, and I sort of got depressed in my mid 20s. And I think a lot of it, when I look back now, was related to feeling undervalued in certain organizations, and I didn't feel I was on a particular path that really filled that value bucket. They're all contributing factors, aren't they? And I never wanted to go back there. And the only way out of that for me in my head was to sort of be in control of the path going forward and do something that ultimately filled that value bucket.
That's amazing. Thank you for the brief introduction, but I think there's so much you've already kind of touched on that, and it's amazing. I really appreciate you kind of speaking.
Yeah, no problem.
Not just what it means to you in terms of the business, but yourself and personally. And I think that's so important to have that connection. You spoke about connection with people, also connection with your own values, and looking at wanting to do something that you feel is kind of purposeful.
Well, we all want to be valued, don't we? That's the nuts and bolts of it. We, as humans, we like to be connected, and we like to feel loved, and we want to feel that anything we do has ultimate value from it. And we go home at night, or when we finish the week off, we've got something to talk about with our partners, and go, "You never guess what I did today. I had this idea, and this led to this, and this." And I think that's really how you create really amazing teams that not everybody wants to be an entrepreneur, but you can be an entrepreneur within a team and go on that journey together. And I guess that's what we're trying to create at Blendsmiths. I don't want to build a team of people who feel like I did when I was in a bigger organization. It's like you come in here, really just come to the table with lots of ideas. We'll listen to them. They're not always going to go forward into something, but it's about, let's have a discussion about it. Never feel concerned about expressing your ideas. This is what it's all about. And, hopefully the team will turn around and say that's exactly how it is.
And you spoke then about organisations and about how not wanting staff to feel how you did, maybe when you add value. And it's interesting because for myself, I moved into a new role in January, joined a startup, which is really cool. It's an exciting venture. But I left my previous organisation. We're not going into too much details. It was around that value. I mean, I left with nothing like that, which is a bit of a gamble, I know. So that decision to step away, but I just felt in that environment I was able to be the best version of myself, and it was
that totally makes sense. Yeah,
somewhere where you kind of needed to step away from it, and sometimes to step away, have that bit of a really fresh recharge, and then think, okay, what are my strengths, what can I really bring to the table? I think it's so important, but it shows that, and I wonder how many people are in environments where they're allowed to be the best version of themselves, or feel that they're kind of not, they've got something and they've got this idea, but will it be listened to? Can I actually bring it to the table? So it sounds like it's very much not the case. Encourage everyone to be that entrepreneur. I think it's a really cool space.
Yeah, thank you. I think that number is probably a lot larger than you think. There's there's a lot of really great people, and a lot of really great organisations, but yeah, there's just something really difficult in not feeling that value in what you do, and we all hear it. You're talking to your friends down at the pub, or you're on the bus, just people moaning about their jobs or complaining about certain things, and most of the time it's generally there's a consistency behind it. It's either they don't get along with people within the organization, or their boss is giving them a hard time and not hearing them, or they just that they don't feel that value that we've talked about, and it's never usually much more outside the structure of that. And I think we really need to address ways of working for the better, really, and that's what we're championing anyway at Blendsmiths. It's how can we give people that freedom and flexibility, but also in the confines of we have got a strategy, and we want to obviously execute that. But I guess in a way for Blendsmiths, we're fairly lucky because most people who are coming into these roles are the first people in these roles, so they get to stamp their sort of authority on that particular position and do things in a certain way with the guidance of the leadership team. But yeah, I mean, everybody seems really happy, and I try and connect with all of them as much as I possibly can just to get that feedback on that. Because, again, as much as me and Chris have been managers in the past, this is our first business really, and first time we've built a team. So, we're we're on this journey for the first time. But yeah, you obviously talked about football, which you don't know much about my background, but I was part of Premier League clubs for best part of 12 years growing up, which may be another thing that led to my sort of mental health going downhill in my early 20s, because that's all I ever knew. I just thought I was going to be a footballer. Spending that many years inside the academy system, you don't expect to come out,
Yeah.
But that piece of connectivity within the realms of football and what it means to community. I mean, when you're in academies, it's not really a community piece. But when I came out of that, I was much more related to the community football teams and how that galvanized the local area. And you can't undervalue the importance of that. And I think we do live in a time where people are more open to talking, and obviously this has led you, Hans, to doing this, and people have resonated with your story and resonated with the conversations that you're having, and you can't underestimate how important that really is.
No, yeah, definitely. And I know, well, I didn't realize about your football background. I need to keep myself on track now, because I feel like I could just dive massively into that.
Yeah.
I guess a question as someone who's been through it, was there an aftercare process, or as a youngster when you were kind of in the academy and then it was a no? Was it almost a contact cut, or did the club have a bit of an aftercare? I know that's a big topic, so I've worked in football as a day job as well. I worked for a local county thing, and I did a lot of stuff in the mental health space there, and just realizing the conversation across all levels, like Premier League down to grassroots. It's something that's overlooked, at the moment. So adolescents has come out of gas aggregates talking about
Yeah.
young guys. It's becoming a topic of conversation, but at the stage when you were there, is it kind of just off you go on your own?
It's so funny you mentioned that. Actually, I was having this chat with my father the other day, who was just amazing. Like my dad was a prison officer. He used to work shifts, and he'd swap shifts around to be able to take me to training and football games. He was model father and role model. And we were having a chat the other day because I've never really spoken about what sort of happened and why it all ended, and I sort of fell out of love with it. But the day I used to play for Blackburn Rovers, and yeah, the day they let me go it was obviously heartbreaking, but I felt like it was kind of coming. But I think I probably expected more support after that. I think I spent 5.5, 6 years there. And I got a pretty serious injury playing against Bolton Wanderers, and I never really recovered from that. And I knew my time was up there. And at the time, it was Graham Souness who was the manager, and he only wanted people who were going, 6 foot tall. They basically measured everybody's parents and calculated where you were probably going to be. I'm a short guy. I was never going to reach those heights, and effectively it was just like, your requirements are no longer needed here. And I think they just sent my name and my details out to a bunch of local clubs, and that was kind of it. I got a couple of calls. I think I went to Burnley for a trial one game where, what a trial game's like. Nobody wants to pass you the ball, and sometimes you can be quite isolated. I was on a wing at the time. I went to Rochdale and played a reserve game. And then Colin Kazan Richards, I don't know if you remember him, he was playing
Oh yeah.
for Bury. He basically just ran the show. He was ludicrously good. I scored in that game, but again, just it's a tough slog, isn't it? And that was kind of it. I actually ended up coming out of that with nowhere to go, and I ended up just playing with a local club called Turton, Turton Tigers, And I was just like, right, let's just try and start again and work my way up the non-leagues. But yeah, the support system there was unbelievable. I'm sure now it's completely different as things have
Oh,
held over the
but
years.
I don't know how different it is. I mean, I think there'll be more players, but yeah, it's like you see with some workmates, and one thing happened on their stable, but just because someone's got that title, but they're actually, if they're actually being implemented the right way, I know. So clubs are maybe they will be trying to do the right thing. I think particularly with guys in that environment where it's so competitive, and people have this idea in their head of I am going to be a footballer. To have that identity taken is probably the biggest thing. I mean, I had it very different with football, but I was on the track to doing a PhD. I was going to become an academic, and I got excited. It was that was these are my darkest days because I realised actually I'm just loving the idea of the accolades. I didn't actually love the process, and so
Okay.
I was slogging away, and I realised quite quickly this isn't what I want. But I told everybody like I felt like I created this whole identity and I'm going to be this guy. So almost quitting.
Where do you think that came from then? Do you think that came from your family, or was it driven within yourself?
I think it was within myself. If anything, it was probably defense mechanism for kind of my coping strategy when. So my parents split when I was quite young, and I think I threw myself into education. So I was like, this is somewhere I can succeed, I can distract myself, I can work hard. If you work hard at school, you get results. But suddenly, I went into a research environment where no matter how hard you work, if something's not going to work, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And I couldn't detach my value from the value of the results I was getting. And but yeah, the hardest thing is that telling people that I've made the decision to step away. That was almost harder than stepping away itself because I got so caught up in everyone's going to think I've liked them. Everyone's going to be like, what do you mean? And so that was really difficult.
Yeah. So you'd formed your identity around this persona of what you felt it to be, but actually you didn't feel it inside, but you were obviously worried about the perception and what other people would think. But actually, what did materialize from that? People were totally accepting, and
yeah, exactly. I think once I told the person, so my best mate from uni, that was the person I was most worried about telling. It was someone closest to me. When I told her, and she was just like, "Oh no, that's amazing, but you're still you." In my head, everyone was going to be like, well, "I'm not going to be his mate anymore. I don't know you anymore." Very quickly, they like to people who are your real friends or family, like they're there for who you are as a person, not what you do.
yeah, sure.
And that was like a massive moment, like a penny dropped, and suddenly I was like, okay, I need to think of what do I really want to do, or who am I? Because I've become so tied up in this identity. And yeah, that was probably when I then started to. That was coincided with that 6 months off, so it gave me time to like reset, just find out a bit myself. That opened up the conversation of mental health to me. That was when I was 22, so 8 years ago now. Time's flying, but yeah, since then I've just tried to encourage that conversation, particularly around young guys. I know it's like everyone struggles, but that's something that is environment. I was at all boys school as well, so I was in a male dominated environment. That probably added to it.
Yeah. So what I'm getting from that is that support network that you had, which were your friends, which obviously you chose wisely, and they loved you and showed you nothing but everything's going to be fine. And you still Hand, you're still a great person. Whatever journey and path you take that's what you want to do, right? You're making decisions for yourself. You've given yourself some freedom.
Yeah, it was a massive weight lifted. It was just,
Yeah, I
yeah,
bet.
partly initially it was wow, because I realised how it would be on this journey. But at the same time, I wouldn't change it because I needed that to happen to then relax and just start to find my own peace. Yeah, it's
Yeah, I think you alluded to the beginning of this conversation, though. It's just be the best version of yourself, and I think if you're, we're not always happy, and we're not always, in the clouds of feeling our best, but if you're predominantly unhappy for a certain reason, and if that is the crux of your career or job or whatever it is, you really just, my advice to anybody would be to just look at what you're doing, and if it's not providing you happiness, then you need to make a change. It's as simple as that. And I know it's we're very fortunate, right? If you're from the UK or from a westernized country that's got lots of opportunities, then take advantage of the opportunities. Not everybody around the world has that, but we are lucky enough to have that. And it's a short life, and we don't know how long we're here for. So I think where you can, just make the change.
no, and no, it's been amazing having a chat. I feel like we can talk for ages and ages. Sorry, I really
Yeah, for
don't
sure.
want to take up too much of your time. I'm sure I'll be
No, it's so good.
following up the questions about Blackburn, this, that, and the other football.
Yeah, I used to clean Christopher's boots. If you remember him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was he as full of happiness and joy then as he is now as a pundit?
I don't remember him being, but honestly, I think I was just a bit nervous at the time. Just all these huge professional blokes. It was a bit of a blur, to be honest. Went by in a flash. But yeah, I got lots of great stories about who I've played against and where it's taken me in European competitions. But yeah, feels like a long time ago now. I retired probably 10 years ago, but left sort of academy system 23 years ago.
But
Yeah.
it shows as well, though. Then 8 years in now, Blendsmiths, and it's exciting to see where that goes. I mean, you're dialing in from Australia today. Is that where are you out there for a trip, or is that where you're based now? And so I realise it's just interesting.
No, it's great. A lot of people ask me this, and not a lot of people know. I lived here a long time ago, so I had a house here, or we had a house here. And then during COVID, obviously everybody was sort of working from home. Blendsmiths had slowed down a little bit, and just thought it was a really apt time to probably come across here, spend a bit of time because Australia was open. Go and spend some time on the beaches, and we were planning on having a child, and which subsequently we've had a child, and we just thought it was probably a great gift for our little girl to sort of have her childhood here and get citizenship here. And we're fortunate at the moment because she's pretty small. We sort of come back to the UK quite often, obviously with the business and need to, with a view to potentially setting something up here as well. But then we quickly realised as things started to blow up in the UK and around Europe that we were so busy. It was just crazy what was going on. So we just said let's focus on what's going back in Europe at the moment. And without really thinking about it, what happens is when the team are offline, I'm online. So it feels like a 24-hour business, which was never planned. So it's actually really worked in our favour. Not good for my sleep patterns, but I don't sleep much anyway with a small child. But yeah, so we're here sort of 6 to 8 months of the year, and come back to the UK in a couple of weeks actually. And yeah, who knows? Who knows where the next chapter will be? But yeah, we've been here for a couple of years now.
Sure, the best for you are back. Yeah, I'll hope for get a chance to catch up over coffee at some point. That'd be really nice. Or catch up over at Blendsmiths, of course.
Yeah, no, that'd be grand. Well, when I'm down in London, I'll knock on and hopefully come and see you guys.
No, it'd be perfect. And one thing before we finish, there's a question I've asked everyone. I think you've dived into it a little bit, but what does happiness mean to you? Right?
Happiness means freedom and flexibility. Talked a lot about the constraints in the past. And I think a minute I felt like I took those shackles off, I've never been happier. Past 8 years have been wonderful, you know.
Perfect. No, thanks so much. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, you too, Hans. I really enjoyed chatting to you too and getting to know a little bit about your story. And hopefully we can get a part 2 going.
Yes, sounds perfect. Cheers. Cheers.
Come on, take care.